Okay, welcome, and thank you for attending this live demo, How to Conduct Fair and Insightful Technical Interviews with CodeLive. We have a very exciting presentation for you today. We have representatives from our Codility engineering team, as well as from our solutions engineers, whom I will introduce at length in just a moment. So let's get started with a little bit of housekeeping before we go. As you noticed, today's session is being recorded. We will send the recording out to attendees and registrants so you can share with friends and colleagues. And those who aren't able to join us today will also be able to catch up. Please use the Q&A function to pose questions throughout the presentation. Some we may answer along the way, and some we'll leave time for, hopefully at the end of the session. Today, we have for you two members from our engineering team who actually work on this very product, CodeLive. We have Allison Rodriguez, a front-end engineer here at Codility. We also have Julian Dobra, who is an engineering manager on that same team here at Codility. And our senior solution engineer, Ted Erland, also works at Codility, obviously, and he is here to help as well. Allison is going to be representing in our mock interview the individual contributor persona. She will be representing a series of vignettes rather than a contiguous interview to make it a little bit more informal and conversational. Julian will be playing the role of engineering manager, and Ted is going to pinch hit for us as a talent acquisition partner to the engineering team. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ted to kick us off.
Thanks, Lindsay, and hi, everyone. I appreciate you joining us all today for this hopefully informative and engaging webinar session. As Lindsay very aptly set the table, we're going to be walking you through our CodeLive module and give you some best practices and insights on how this can be used to have really consistent, meaningful, and productive paired conversations with your technical candidates. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here, which should give you a view of the Codility homepage. Those of you that are on camera, can you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you can see that okay? All right, awesome, thank you. So this is Codility. This is our platform. We aim to help companies gain unbiased and meaningful insights into candidates' competencies. That's the hardest thing about hiring good engineers these days, and most of you on the call know this. There are so many subjective data points out there, right? Candidates tell you what they're good at, but what we aim to do is demystify and make it easier to get objective data points that show evidence for their skills. Those of you that have been with CodeCheck, that's our module where we gauge their skills asynchronously. What we've developed CodeLive to be is a follow-up to that, right? A candidate's coding ability is only a piece of the puzzle. Part of the equation is how well do they communicate? How well do they really understand technical concepts? But more importantly, how can you gauge those in a consistent, fair, and unbiased manner? So that's what CodeLive aims to do and what we'll be showing you today. So when you're setting up a CodeLive interview as an administrator, and remember, I'm playing the talent acquisition role. I'm not a TA person, I just play one on TV. So what I'm going to show you is how to set up and administer the interviews. And the real efficiency gain for the TA persona here is you can empower your teams to have really interesting and valuable conversations, but you can do so in a way that makes your life easier and their life easier. So we're going to show you what that looks like right now. So for a lot of companies, a live interview is a number of pieces coming together, right? It's your code editor, a Word document with questions you want them to ask. Could be an audio-visual bridge as well. What we aim to do is streamline that into one consistent workflow. So what you're seeing here when you create a CodeLive interview session is the three different mode formats that we have. And I'm actually going to ask you to disregard these last two. We've recently made a really exciting efficiency gain in streamlining the value that all of these add into one easy process. Now, you may be asking, what is a whiteboard? What is a template? What is a report? So whiteboard mode allows you to have structured but flexible interviews, right? That allow you to allow dialogue-based interviews to evolve in the direction they may. Template mode allows you to add some structure into it, right? I want some guardrails. I want some lines to color within. I'm going to set up with that. Whiteboard mode is very similar to a code review exercise where you have a candidate's work sample. You talk through it to either refactor, improve on it, or just really understand how well do you understand this, right? That can be a really effective exercise. If someone can't explain the work they've done, they don't truly understand it. In the world of generative AI and proctoring is a need, we really find that the best way to understand a candidate's knowledge is to allow them to talk through it and expand on it in a live setting. So like I said, these modes are depreciated now. What we have developed is a whiteboard mode. And the reason we developed it is to make creating a meaningful and interesting session a lot more streamlined. So when I'm going through the process of TA persona, the first thing I want to do is I want to assign a candidate, right? And you'll see why at the end of this, so bear with me. But associating a candidate with this allows us to get the interview or the invitation out to the right person. It also, for your purposes as a hiring manager, this is where you manage all of your CodeLive interviews, right? All of your candidate sessions are managed in our applicant tracking system. So associating the candidate with the session is really important for a tracking standpoint, right? So that's why we take that first step there and assigning the candidate. Customizing the interview. This is the important piece. This is really the money shot, I guess, for lack of a better term. So the first off, naming the interview is important, right? Why is this important? You want to have consistency and be able to identify it. So for this purposes, we have our wonderful Allison playing the candidate. I'm going to name it in a really meaningful way. I'm going to call it Allison Rodriguez. And then we'll do 12-6. And just keeping that consistent is important, right? To understand that this is the person interviewing and when they're going there. And this is what I talked about from the value add of importing tasks or importing a candidate's report, right? What these mean for the non-technical persona is this allows you to create a set of programming challenges and upload them into the session, right? It's basically giving a coding prompt that you want them to follow during the conversation. I know we hear from a lot of individuals that we work with that hiring managers kind of do their own thing. They have a loose plan of how they want a program to go, but we find that having a structured challenge to bring in really adds a lot of valuable structure and consistency, right? If we're trying to hire well, we're trying to have everyone go through a very similar experience, and having a pre-baked programming challenge in there that everyone knows, that your hiring managers know how to administer, is a really important piece of the puzzle. The report piece is an interesting conversation piece as well. The reason that we have the ability to import a candidate's previous work is that this can be a really important and interesting conversation point, right? How did they go about tackling that challenge? There's a lot you can learn from seeing the candidate's previous solution, but also having them walk you through it or asking them pointed questions about it, right? So in one fell swoop, we have the ability to have a candidate's previous work brought in and also bring in questions that are going to add value to this conversation and add structure to it. Two of the most interesting pieces that we've been seeing more and more adoption for are the Canvas and the interview plan. These are ways that you can add even more structure to this conversation. A lot of the best interviews are not only coding focused, they're focused on technical communication and visual demonstration. So this is where the Miro Canvas template comes in. With just one fell swoop here, you can take a pre-designed Miro board that your team uses and bring it in to your environment, right? And the efficiency gain there is you don't have to pop back and forth to a Miro tab, right? Or a whiteboarding tab. You have one link loaded in there that's already configured and already ready to use for your purposes. The interview plan is a way that you can add even more structure. Many organizations, when they're having technical conversations, have prompts that they want the hiring manager to follow up on. Usually this is shared in a document format and notes are taken elsewhere. What we propose to do is to bring all of your questions in at the start of it and then have everything pre-configured and available. If we preview the plan, this will actually be a resource available to the hiring manager to check through, follow up on, and take notes on, right? So all told, what we've been able to accomplish with this streamlined setup is we get a structured programming challenge in there that your hiring managers will know and be comfortable with and can give them some good guidance on how to test the coding competencies. We have a data point in the candidate's previous solution that can be used to ask deeper level questions, really understand how they got to the solution. We have a Miro whiteboard enabled, which will allow your team to have a visual-based conversation. And then last and certainly not least, we have a structured interview plan that will give them guidance while they're doing the interview on which questions to ask, which follow-up probes to ask, and a streamlined way to take notes on that. Once we have all that configured, we move on to the next stage, which is assigning interviewers. I'm going to assign myself here. And the reason that I mentioned at the beginning, kind of a teaser, the reason assigning the candidate and assign interviews is important, is we do have a very easy way for you as a TA administrator to schedule this and make sure the right people know where to be and when to be there, right? So you can schedule your interview for a current date or future date, a specific time. And once you do that, and set a duration, of course. And once you do that, these people that are associated with this will receive an email notification with a link they can click to add to their calendar. So again, you'll probably see a theme here: streamlining, making it more consistent, making it more repeatable, making it more reliable. That's the main point of what we're trying to do here. And you as a TA administrator, you do this once for one candidate, you can set that up and make it more of a repeatable part of your process. Since we do have two of our wonderful engineers on the call, and you'll be hearing from them shortly, I do want to just throw a quick question to you, Julian, and you, Allison. I know we talked a lot about the what and the why. From your perspective as an engineer, what has made you the most proud to work on this product? What really excites you the most about what you've built here and what we continue to build here?
Yeah, I'll go first. So basically what I think is really special about CodeLive and what I really enjoy about it is that everything's all in one place. So as a candidate, you don't need to download or install anything, make sure everything's set up on your computer. You just enter your email and everything's there and everything works.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, from my side, it's definitely the structure, but also the flexibility it gives me, because like interviews, so for example, from my engineering manager perspective, good interviews are a dialogue, right? And they need some structure to kick it off and also to make them comparable between different candidates. But they're also like a dialogue on the same level, right? Between just tech enthusiasts and people like engineers. And CodeLive really gives me this possibility.
Yeah, thank you, Julian and Allison. Great shout outs. And I think, Allison, the point you brought up is really important to understand. Like, that's another of the big reasons why a cloud-based platform, right? A lot of times when you're hiring teams are doing a technical interview, they're using locally downloaded coding editors that may or may not be running the same version of the technologies you need to use, right? So having a cloud-based editor really ensures that the candidate experience is going to be consistent from candidate to candidate. So great answers. I'm really glad that we're able to have a reading rainbow type situation here where you don't take it from us, you take it from our engineers. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to that team to walk through the interviewer and candidate side of things. So without further ado, Julian, I will pass it over to you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Ted. That was a wonderful part. Let me take over from here. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my emails currently. Yeah, so I just wanted to showcase, so from the interviewer's perspective, this would be the email that I receive after the interview was created and also scheduled. And from that interview, I get already some informative points around the session itself. If the session is based on a previous assessment of a candidate, I can also review this and already prepare myself for this. But in our case, let's just jump directly to the session. 1 second. Wonderful. So now you see the CodeLive environment. Let's first make a brief overview around the aspects that were set up by Ted and now should have ended up in my interview. It's not one-to-one the same, but in the so in the first place, we see that already one task is added to the interview. We see the task description. We see some base code for this coding task. We also see if an interview plan was added to the interview, we have it immediately visible here for the interviewer and just for the interviewer for sure, because this is basically the plan for the interview, where the interviewer or the interviewers take also their notes around the dialogue with the candidate. So I see in my interview plan, I also have a section for general notes that I would like to take from the session. And also you can add parts, for example, that are usual for technical interviews, right? That's another piece of structure and consistency that you can bring in within the interview plan. For example, to add a section with an introduction, right? So usually you ask the candidate if there's anything unclear, or get to know each other a bit. And then also from this, you might already get some insights that you would like to take a note about, right? Besides, you see the other questions that we would like to cover. So we have 2 questions added, and I also added some probes to go a bit deeper within these topics, right? So some things that I can guide myself a bit on in order to ask a bit deeper, right? So like a question usually has a few interesting facets, and in order to keep them in mind, I also added them here and can get the understanding if the candidate actually brings them up maybe themselves, right? So demonstrate with this deeply knowledge about a certain topic. One thing I also want to point out and to share is if I first want to do the introductional part, maybe I don't want to share immediately the task description with the candidate, because engineers, we know how we are. We look at the problem and then we want to jump on it and solve it, right? But first, in order to keep the horses a bit down, we can hide the task description, and it will be blurred out for the candidate when they join the session. And why not just start the session and with that enable Alison to actually join in as a candidate? Because before doing this, Alison is in the login screen and basically can already log in, but not joining the session. By starting the session, she is enabled to join. And we also can check for the just for the template. So Ted already, based on knowing what skills we want to test for in the session, added the template and the questions, right? So they link us to the skills that we actually want to evaluate, and also consistently evaluate throughout different interviews with multiple candidates. And therefore, he added already this template which refers to the second question that we will take a look with the candidate in a second. But first, let's go back and welcome Alison. We see Alison joined the interview. Welcome, Alison, to our interview. And oh, what happened? So I see already that now the Zoom thing is above this, but let me move this away. Yeah, so now we see the join call button reflects that Alison already joined the multimedia functionality of our platform, which means that she already connected to the audio and video call. I will join her to quickly demonstrate this feature. So when joining the call, we see the multimedia view appears. It's possible to resize this view, just activating my camera, not the sound, because it might result in some unexpected sounds. Hello, Alison, welcome to our interview. And I'm also able to, because you see already, let's say now, usually we have multiple screens, right? And with arranging a bit the elements in our platform, we also added the capability to actually open the multimedia panel in a separate view. So actually, when I click now, this is popping that out. And this now messed up a bit my monitor setting. So I need to go back, because now we see that's in a different view. I will just go back to the main view and go back to just showing. See. Yeah, so Alison, we see also in which file she is, right? That comes really handy. So we see her currently, she's in this file, which is indicated by the little blob on the file level. Here we see also her cursor currently, right, which is also marked with her name. So if we hover over, we see the name. That comes handy if you have multiple participants. Sometimes you're also joining with several interviewers and you're interacting. So you actually can, you can sort out this problem in the jungle of cursors, right? So you will not have a problem identifying the who is who of cursors. And now actually, Alison, let's pretend we starting the first task in our interview. So I will reveal the task description, which now makes this visible to Alison, and she actually can start reading, and we can discuss how she would approach that problem, right? How she would start, what she sees as at the challenge, and how she also would approach solving it, right? Let's pretend we had this discussion, and now Alison actually starts to write some code and actually solving the solution in the editor. So we see Alison already coding. So what I can do is I can follow her. So especially in multi-file and project tasks that we're also supporting. So that's not a multi-file and project task, but we're also supporting these kind of tasks. We see now I'm following Alison automatically when she changes files, and also when she's coding for a longer. I mean, you know, classes should be not this long, right? But sometimes they get a bit longer. And then in this case, we also follow the cursor of Alison, and I can lay back and really concentrate on what matters. And that's her code, right? So let's.
Yeah. And I actually prepared a little solution on the side. So you get to see when I switch tabs to go and copy that, you'll see that my indicator shows that I'm inactive. So that can be really helpful for the interviewer to know if somebody's actively in the tab or maybe they're sneakily doing something on the side. Just nice to know.
Yes. Now you're back. We see you. You're back in your view.
There's my response. I can also run the code and see, make sure that it's passing all of the pre-built tests here. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Alison. So this was basically how a usual coding task would look like, right? Now let's take a bit a look on one of our questions from the interview plan. So after the introduction, we have here one question, and the question is, tell me about the time when you had to provide constructive feedback on a code readability to a colleague. How did you approach the conversation, and what was the impact on their performance? And one thing that I also already added here is some criteria of success. So some things that I, as an interviewer, would expect from the candidate to answer, and I can then cross them a bit off in my mind or make some notes around actually if they were taken in consideration by Alison. Alison.
Yeah. So this is the part where I, as a candidate, would explain how I've used repeatable techniques and tools. I am very aware of all the best practices. I want to show my understanding of the impact of code quality. And I also want to make some actionable suggestions to enhance the code quality. So things like that are what we would look for in the response of a good candidate. And Julian can note all of this down while I'm chatting about it.
Yeah, I'm just randomly stating here that one of the things maybe were not mentioned, and this then can help me later when I look on the feedback of the session to actually understand and make also decisions together with my other interviewers or based on my conducted notes and interviews. So if I would now want to go a bit deeper with the candidate, I also can take these probes I added that are connecting to my question. For example, I could ask something, how did you approach the conversation and what was the impact on their performance? Can you provide more details about the specific actions that you took and the results achieved in order to go a bit deeper and find more out about the context of the question with the candidate. Then let's go to the second question. And the second question is very interesting because it's more like a system design question. So this might be not an interview for a junior or medium and candidate. It might be maybe more like a senior position, and we want to discuss more how the engineers maybe take things out of a business context, how they design a specific system for certain requirements. And usually for this, we don't even need to code, right? So, and this really helps me also in, for example, in my interviews that I conduct as an engineering manager, because they're often like more around questions, dialogue, and interacting with each other on a whiteboard. So let's briefly read the question. Tell me about the time when you designed a new system in production. Describe the system requirements and how you ensured your design addressed them. And now I can start the discussion with Alison. Alison, we can first have a discussion on a high level before even going to the whiteboard. And ultimately, we can change to the whiteboard. And we have here already some guidance which help the candidate to not just talk through, to also visually basically showcase how they would design and what also they want to note down and bring it a bit into context. And therefore, this is really helpful. And maybe, Alison, you can drive us a bit through the example task.
Sure, yeah. So this is the part where you'd want to see how well the engineer communicates what their thought process is. You want to know that they've used some sort of an organized strategy to be able to discover the system requirements. Make sure that they have sort of a comprehensive list of all of the requirements that they took into account when designing the system. Also, make sure that they took into account all of the potential risks that were involved in the design of the system. Make sure they took into account availability, scalability, points of failure, things like this. And ultimately just discover if this engineer is capable of designing a successful system that meets all of the requirements.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Let's pretend we finalized this task. And we still have some time left, right? Or we discussed a bit, and Alison was also pointing out that she developed in specific projects or on previous roles in a specific language or with a specific framework. And we want to jump on a task or something that's related to this. CodeLive also gives the flexibility in order to adapt your interview to those requirements. So we have the capability to search for tasks within the session or also before the session if you want to set it up and find a specific task before you start your interview. For sure, that's also possible. You can search for the tasks that you look for with specific filters and then add them basically to the running session, and they will just appear. And you can continue interviewing the candidate. That's one piece of flexibility. Another one is the ability also to change to the whiteboard mode, which is more a free-form mode, where I can just type my requirements. or like the task that I have in mind, Alison will immediately see this collaborative editor, and then can choose her programming language and can just start basically solving the task or the question that I had in mind.
Yeah, and this is often really helpful when you're trying to describe a concept or really want to dive into a specific programming paradigm that you want to make sure the candidate can understand and code on the fly.
Thank you, Alison. Because I mean, we don't show all features today, but we want to show the core and how you basically can drive from interview creation until basically also viewing the results and making a decision. So let's end the interview here. So I think this was an excellent challenge. Please always provide us feedback, right? There might be also sometimes something going wrong, and we all, our team monitors the feedback on an hourly, daily basis, and we really love to get in touch with you. So if something went wrong, or you also loved something, then please tell us about this, and yeah, we will also get back to you in no time. So we have a scorecard after the interview was finished. So here we can rate the basic skills like technical abilities, also the problem solving and the communicational part. And let's just submit. And from here, we can go directly to the candidate report. Surely we have here the scorecard results available. But what we also have is the latest state of the canvas. So if I want to go back to the system design or discuss it with the other interviewers, I can do this also here based on the report. I'm also seeing here the coding solution of Alison, right? So if I want to get back to the code, or want to debug something in the aftermath of the interview, I can go back and also see the completeness of the unit tests that were executed on that task. And like this, it's visible for all the challenges in the interview. We have a general summarization of the interview, interview details, so who was the interviewer and the candidate, basic timeline events, and then very importantly on the end, we have the notes taken during the interview, and this is where you can come back and also can refine basically your notes taken for the general notes, right? That you just took an overview of the interview, or for specific interview questions and the plan that were asked. So you can come back and refine this further. Based on role, you have visibility to the notes taken here. And so the hiring manager can see the notes, for example, from all the interviewers that were interviewed during the interview. A specific interviewer might only see their own notes. And I'm also able here to edit them. Yeah. I think this is what we wanted to show for today. I hope that excited you. I think we showed it basically from the beginning to the end. There is way more to it. So there are more facets and more possibilities. And also we are always happy to hear from our customers how they creatively use our tools, and how their interviews are structured, and what challenges they also have when conducting them. So in order that we can adapt our platform and further can help you hiring the right people throughout your interviews. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Julian, Allison, and Ted. We have a few audience questions, and since a few moments remain, I thought we could address at least a few of them. Okay, the first one, I'm gonna probably pop over to you, Allison, as our resident candidate, representative on the team today. There's a question about how interviewers or hiring managers, or I guess even TA, can help candidates set candidates up for success and feel confident and be prepared for a technical interview.
Yeah, sure. So we actually have an excellent candidate preparation guide just for this question. The most important thing to keep in mind is just clear communication throughout the whole process and really making sure the candidate understands what's expected of them and what's going to be evaluated at each stage. Also, something that's a good idea is to leave a couple minutes at the beginning of the interview to talk about some non-technical things to build rapport and make sure the candidate feels comfortable in your interview environment.
Awesome, thank you. Julian, I've got maybe, let's see here, maybe a two-parter. So in the event that there are multiple interviewers, what does the notes and feedback look like? How is that handled?
Yeah, wonderful question. I mean, this due to time and demo limitations, right? We were not really showcasing this, but every interviewer has their own notes and interview plan section. It's the same, but the notes are specific, right? And the notes will also be shown in the candidate report based on who has taken which notes, and the name of the interviewer will be displayed. Yeah.
Excellent. There's a related question that just came through, so I'm going to ask that now. John wants to know, so the demo we did showed multiple parts of an interview in one call: behavioral, technical, system, etc. If these were separate interviews, are there ways to connect these, or do the hiring managers have access to the previous notes?
Yeah, that's also an excellent question. Definitely, so the hiring manager has the overview and access to the different interviews, as well as can basically structure them, right? And utilize our platform in order to shape them and template them correctly for their purpose.
Great.
I'll also add in there, so each candidate on the platform has its own timeline with all of the associated interviews in which they participated. So if you were in the use case you mentioned to have multiple interviews breaking down different parts, each of those would live on one consolidated candidate timeline. So you could go back to see the notes from the previous CodeLive session. Each session would be its own event on the timeline, if that makes sense.
Okay, excellent. We've got another one for you, Ted, here. So how, I guess, especially representing our talent acquisition persona with whom you spend a lot of time, speaking, on a day-to-day basis, what's the best way to use a pre-screen take home like a code check test in combination with a technical interview?
Yeah, it's a great question, Lindsay. I mean, the purpose of the take-home test is to provide a work sample, right? You get a very in-depth example of how a candidate goes about solving a very particular problem. So the most common use case we see is using that as a very efficient discovery process to get a sense for how a candidate approaches technical challenges. The CodeLive is a good way to use that in a follow-up nature, right? So as I mentioned earlier, the best way to proctor is not to look at someone's behavior and assume they cheated. The best way to proctor is to take the work they did, ask them to explain it, change it, or refactor it, right? And I think there's different use cases, right? For a talent acquisition person, you can't send every resume you get onto the engineering managers. They just don't have that much time in their day, right? So we need some sanity check. We need some supplement to their resume to say, hey, they actually know this stuff. We also need a way to dive deeper into it, right? To figure out if they really know it, right? So code check is a sanity check that provides a good work sample, gives the hiring manager some good pointed questions, and then the CodeLive is a good way to follow up, double click on things, and dive deeper into it.
Great. Thank you, Ted. We've got another one here from Joseph. Is there a possibility to give candidates hints if they're struggling with specific prompts. And I think I'm going to ask Allison first, and then Julian, I think you're going to have an opinion too. So I'd love to hear from both of you.
Sure, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so I think really at the core of CodeLive, the purpose is to have sort of a conversation. So the idea is really for the interviewer to be able to guide the candidate through the experience. So to be able to ask the right questions to help them along the way. And that's also sort of the point of having those probing questions in the interview plan, like to have kind of an idea of the types of questions you can ask to get the type of information you want from your candidate.
Cool. Thank you, Allison. Julian, want to add anything there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first of all, yes. I mean, you're in a dialogue, but you can use, for example, in the current state of the product, the interview plan to also put in these hints. But we're also thinking about providing like a separate structure for this, either with the task, right? So in the current context, the whiteboard could be used. For example, if you're in the whiteboard mode in the interview, you could just write out a few hints that would be also visible to the candidate throughout the solutioning part. Yeah.
Excellent. Ted came off mute. Want to put a final pin on that?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, I think Julian's absolutely right. Like, you have a lot of leeway as far as what you want to give or not give people. Keep in mind, you can also modify the starting code that appears in the editor. So if your hiring teams want to write some helpful comments out in there, if they want to change the naming of things to be more explicit, what we provide is a rough draft, right? The reason that we have the state where you can provision the session without starting it is so your team can go in and customize the code, the notes, anything to be reflective of the candidate experience they want to create.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe just one more thought on that. So it's also possible to create your own company task via our platform, right? And there basically you could bring all in those flavors and specifics on how do you also want to communicate based on your how your team designs their interviews. And there you can basically use the task description or the editor, the base solution to already bring in those hints. Thanks, Ted.
Wonderful. Okay. I am going to close us out with just a very quick wrap here. I would like to thank our illustrious presenters today, Ted, Allison, Julian. Thank you so much. You've been such great sports in helping us communicate the value and the functionality of a well-run technical interview. Thank you so much for the audience participation. Those were really insightful and thoughtful questions that you posed to us. So if you would look to have more information about Codility or CodeLive, you can visit our website, codility.com, and request a demo to see more in-depth about CodeLive or any part of the Codility platform. We've also got on offer a free trial that you can go to the website and go to codility.com/free-trial. So you can just dive right in, try it for yourself today if you wanted. And see that experience firsthand. And then there is also a really wonderful technical interviewer guide to help your teams understand what the best practices are to get the most out of your technical interviews, get the most reliable hiring signals so you can, hire confidently. We will, as I mentioned before, be sending a follow-up with the recording. We'll send some assets as well, probably like this guide and maybe that guide that Allison mentioned as well for candidate preparation, so you can see how we advise being transparent throughout the process. So be on the lookout for that follow-up coming soon. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.